the summer of 2021, a woman named Sarah drove to 3 different dealerships in suburban Dallas looking for a used car. She had a budget, a preference, and a flexible timeline. What she did not have after visiting all 3 lots was a car. The inventory was almost gone. The salesman apologized. Some of the lots had tumbleweeds where the rows of vehicles used to be. The reason, she was eventually told, was a chip shortage. Semiconductors, the tiny components that control almost every system in a modern car, from the engine management to the parking sensors to the infotainment screen, were not being made fast enough. Factories in Taiwan and South Korea that produced them had been running at capacity for months and still could not keep up. Millions of cars could not be finished and delivered because they were waiting for components smaller than a fingernail. The financial cost of that shortage across the global automotive industry alone was estimated at over $200 billion in lost revenue over 18 months. Sarah did not find her car. She ended up paying 12% above the pre-shortage asking price for a vehicle with fewer features than she wanted 6 months later, because that was what the market had become. The 2021 chip shortage is now studied in business schools as one of the clearest demonstrations of how a disruption in a single upstream input, one that most people had never heard of, can travel through a supply chain and arrive in an ordinary person's life wearing a completely different face. The disruption in 2021 was driven by pandemic demand shifts and factory closures. It had nothing to do with the Middle East, nothing to do with Iran, and nothing to do with a waterway 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. The disruption that began in March 2026 does, and it is arriving through a material so unexpected, so far removed from the mental image most people carry of a Persian Gulf oil crisis, that even the analysts who spend their careers watching commodity markets took several weeks to fully absorb what had happened. The material is helium, not the helium in party balloons, not a novelty. The helium that semiconductor fabrication facilities, the chip factories that produce the components inside every smartphone, every laptop, every AI server, every modern vehicle, every medical device, every piece of military hardware, cannot operate without. The helium that cools the superconducting magnets used in the photolithography process, the step where the intricate circuitry of a chip is etched with extraordinary precision onto a silicon wafer. The helium that serves as an inert atmosphere during manufacturing, preventing the contamination that would ruin an entire batch of wafers. The helium that has no practical substitute in advanced fabrication. None. Nitrogen and argon can substitute in older, lower precision facilities. In the advanced fabs that produce the chips the modern economy runs on, the chips inside the AI servers, the high bandwidth memory, the processors in your phone, helium is irreplaceable. Now here is the connection that most people have entirely missed. Qatar produces approximately 1/3 of the world's commercial helium. It does so as a byproduct of liquefied natural gas processing. Helium is extracted from the natural gas stream at the same facilities that liquefy Qatar's enormous gas reserves for export. When those LNG facilities run, helium is produced. When they stop, helium stops. And the only way Qatari helium reaches the world market is by ship, through a port on the Gulf, through the Strait of Hormuz. On February 28, 2026, Iranian drone and missile strikes targeted Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city, the largest LNG processing complex on Earth, responsible for roughly 20% of global LNG supply and a substantial portion of global helium output. Qatar Energy halted all production. On March 2nd, the company declared force majeure on its contracts. On March 4th, the Strait of Hormuz was effectively closed to commercial shipping. In the space of less than a week, approximately 1/3 of the world's commercial helium supply had been simultaneously taken offline at source and blockaded at the only exit. The financial history of helium shortages is shorter than oil but no less instructive. There have been 4 significant global helium supply crises since 2006. In 2006, 2011, 2012, and 2019. Each one followed a recognizable pattern: a supply disruption at one of the handful of major production facilities. The United States, Qatar, Russia, Algeria removed a fraction of global supply. Spot prices spiked. Industrial gas companies declared force majeure and began rationing allocations. Semiconductor fabs, medical imaging facilities, aerospace manufacturers, and research laboratories competed for shrinking supply. In each previous crisis, the disruption was partial and eventually resolved as alternative sources ramped up or production restarted. The market adapted. Helium is notoriously difficult to store. It leaks through almost any container at a rate of between 0.1 and 1% per month, and in liquid form, it warms and converts back to gas within approximately 45 days. So the market adapted quickly because it had to. The 2026 disruption is different from all 4 previous ones in a specific and financially significant way. In every previous crisis, the production problem and the logistics problem were separate. Supply fell at source, but the shipping routes remained open. What remained of global supply could be redistributed. The 2026 crisis has simultaneously removed production and blocked redistribution. Qatar's helium is not being produced. The helium that was in transit when the crisis began, in specialized cryogenic ISO containers on ships in the Gulf, is stranded. Approximately 1/3 of the world's entire inventory of cryogenic helium containers is currently sitting in or around Qatar, unable to move. Those containers hold helium in liquid form. Liquid helium warms and escapes through pressure release valves within 45 days of loading. The stranded inventory cannot be held for later delivery. It is, in a very literal sense, disappearing. The financial consequences moved through the chip industry with a speed that surprised even the analysts who had been tracking helium markets for years. Samsung and SK Hynix, the 2 South Korean companies that between them produce the majority of the world's memory chips, the DRAM and NAND flash that goes into every phone, every laptop, every AI server, source approximately 65% of their helium from Qatar. Within days of the Ras Laffan strikes, both companies had activated helium conservation protocols, rationing supply across their fabrication lines, prioritizing their highest value production, and drawing down safety stocks. Spot prices for ultra-pure industrial helium doubled within the first week. Industrial gas companies, including Linde, whose share price rose 15% in the weeks following the disruption, while the broader S&P 500 fell, began fielding calls from customers who wanted to lock in long-term supply contracts at whatever price was available. The allocation hierarchy in a helium shortage is documented from previous crises and operates with a cold logic that the market has established over decades. Medical imaging gets priority. MRI scanners use liquid helium to cool their superconducting magnets, and a hospital cannot tell a patient with a suspected tumor that the scanner is unavailable because a waterway in the Persian Gulf is closed. Semiconductor manufacturing gets the next allocation because the economic value of a chip fab running at full capacity is enormous, and the downstream consequences of reduced output cascade through entire supply chains. Aerospace and research follow, at the bottom of the allocation hierarchy. Receiving whatever remains after critical applications have been served are the industrial users, the welding operations, the fiber optic manufacturers, the weather balloon operators, and at the very bottom, receiving nothing in a serious shortage, party balloons. What the allocation hierarchy means in financial terms is this: every company and institution that depends on helium is simultaneously approaching the same small group of alternative suppliers, primarily in the United States and Russia, with urgent requests for long-term contracts. The U.S. domestic helium industry, already running at high utilization before the crisis, cannot meaningfully increase output on short notice. New helium projects in Canada, Tanzania, and South Africa are in development but are years from meaningful production. The market that has been disrupted does not have a spare capacity buffer it can call on quickly. It has a fixed supply that is now fighting over itself in real time. The connection to the 2021 chip shortage that Sarah experienced in the Dallas dealerships is not metaphorical. It is structural. A semiconductor supply disruption of sufficient duration reduces the output of chips. Reduced chip output extends lead times. Extended lead times cascade through every industry that assembles products containing chips, which is essentially every manufacturing industry in the modern economy. Automotive, consumer electronics, industrial equipment, medical devices, defense systems. The AI data centers that the largest technology companies in the world have been building at extraordinary expense, dependent on a continuous supply of advanced processors, are exposed to a disruption in a gas that most of their executives had never thought about before March 2026. There is a financial market signal embedded in this that the defensive investor who understands history can read clearly. In every previous helium shortage, the industrial gas companies that supply the market, Linde, Air Products, Air Liquide, saw their share prices rise as customers competed for constrained supply and contracted at higher prices. In every previous chip shortage, the companies with the largest inventory buffers, the most diversified supply chains, and the greatest manufacturing flexibility outperformed those operating on lean, just-in-time assumptions. In every previous supply chain crisis, the companies and countries that had invested in domestic production capacity and strategic reserves absorbed the shock far better than those that had optimized purely for cost efficiency and single-source dependency. South Korea, which sources 65% of its helium from Qatar and routes the vast majority of that supply through the Strait of Hormuz, activated a 100 trillion won market stabilization program in response to the broader energy and supply chain disruption. Japan, which gets approximately 90% of its crude oil from the Middle East and routes most of it through Hormuz, faces simultaneous pressure on its energy imports and its semiconductor supply chain. Taiwan, whose TSMC fabrication facilities are less directly exposed to Qatari helium than Samsung and SK Hynix, but nonetheless dependent on complex Gulf-connected supply chains, is watching a crisis that touches its most strategically important industry from an unexpected direction. The man in Washington responsible for economic policy described what was happening with unusual directness in mid-March 2026. The lesson of the Strait of Hormuz, he said, is not only about oil, it is about dependency. It is about what happens when the physical infrastructure of civilization, the choke points, the corridors, the ports, become the battlefield. When a regime calculates that the world needs that infrastructure more than it fears the consequences of aggression. Sarah in Dallas in 2021 learned what a chip shortage feels like from the inside. She paid 12% over asking price for a car she did not want, because a supply chain she had never thought about had broken in a place she had never heard of. The 2026 disruption is larger, faster, and running through more supply chains simultaneously. The helium is not the whole story, but it is the part of the story that reveals something the oil price alone conceals. That the Strait of Hormuz is not just an energy choke point. It is a choke point for the physical materials that the entire technology economy depends on. And the market, in March 2026, is only beginning to price that in. If this surprised you, hit like and leave a comment. What was the detail that landed hardest? Subscribe so you don't miss the next video. What happens when the crisis doesn't end? And what the families who survived every previous Iran shock did differently from everyone else.